We're going to go ahead and get started here. So my name is Colin Lawrence, and presenting with me is Jake Brown. We are both product engineers on the Field Maps team, and we're going to be talking to you guys today about Arcade in Field Maps. So we're going to briefly cover an agenda for what we're going to cover today. We're going to give a brief introduction to what Field Maps is, in case you guys are not familiar. We're going to cover the basics of Arcade, and we'll take a look at the Arcade editor and explore some of the Arcade profiles or the areas of the software where you can use Arcade, specifically as it pertains to Field Maps. We will spend a lot of time in Field Maps Designer configuring smart forms and geofences with Arcade. Then we're going to touch on configuring your web maps with Arcade in Map Viewer. And we'll then finish up with a look at some of the resources to help you guys get going with Arcade. So let's talk a little bit about what Field Maps is. So I'd like to get a show of hands for everybody that has used Field Maps before. So most of you, maybe 75%, 80%, it's pretty good. But I will cover just briefly what it is for the rest of you. It's basically a comprehensive mobile GIS solution built specifically for your field operations. And what do we mean by comprehensive? Well, we have built field maps to support activities that occur within all four foundational elements of field operations. So those elements are planning and coordination, which is your office experience typically, configuring those maps for your field workers. The second element is situational awareness or location sharing, for instance, geofences, things to make you aware of what's going on around you. The third element is data capture, so that's basically your collect, or what you might be familiar with when you're using collector. And then the fourth is integration with other tools, so whether that's webhooks or third-party GPS receivers. And then just one last thing on field maps. We're just trying to orient you to what's available. We have field maps for the web, which is called Field Maps Designer. That's where you're going to be configuring your maps for your field workers, your forms, and then we have the Field Maps mobile app, which is where you're going to be consuming those maps. So let's move over a little bit to Arcade. So if some of you may be familiar with Arcade, this is an intro course, so we're going to cover some basics. So bear with me if that's the case. But Arcade is a flexible expression language that can be used in ArcGIS Field Maps to streamline your data collection workflows and increase situational awareness in the field. Arcade is portable, lightweight, and secure, and most importantly, it's a geospatial expression language for use within the ArcGIS platform. Arcade's portability allows it to be used across the ArcGIS platform. For example, a pop-up created in Arcade, pop-up created using Arcade in ArcGIS Pro can be shared to ArcGIS Online, and the functionality will remain consistent between the two applications. It's lightweight, meaning it's not a full programming language, which can make it easier to use, but also very powerful and executes quickly. Because it's not a full programming language, it's secure, and the security of your systems cannot be compromised by using it. And Arcade, of course, is geospatial, which means you can access your GIS information and query items using spatial methods in your expressions. So we'll cover some of the benefits of using Arcade, since you guys are clearly interested in getting started. So first, it's easy to get going. There's tons of documentation that we have online, which if you haven't seen the Arcade resources page, I highly recommend going ahead and taking a look at that. We've recently revamped the website, so it's more intuitive, especially for those that are new to Arcade. There are a lot of sample expressions out there on GitHub or on the community pages to help you get started. And aside from the ease of use of Arcade resources, the language itself can be very simple to use. Some simple expressions are only one line long, allowing you to start small while you learn and grow. And using Arcade means you can calculate your outputs on the fly. This is especially helpful if you have data that changes frequently. You don't have to go into the table on the back end, run field calculations, for example, every time the data has been updated. So this is really useful when it comes to your symbology or your labeling within your map, so you can draw quick attention to locations or assets that need to be addressed quickly. This also means you don't have to worry about changing your schema. For example, if you wanted to add information in your pop-ups that is a concatenation of two fields, you would need to go through the whole process of adding a new field and running the field calculator. With Arcade, you can create expressions that will give you the same results without having to do all that messy work on the back end. And this also means you don't have to own the data that you're working with. So there are cases, for example, if you're using living outlets data, you can still use Arcade to help you symbolize that data and to meet your needs. You can also use calculations on the field in that layer for your pop-ups and your labels. There are, of course, exceptions to this where you may need to make modifications to the data set, in which case you do need to be the owner of the layer. And then where can you use Arcade? This is a talk on field maps, so you can certainly use it in your mobile apps, but not just field maps, also Workforce and Navigator. You can use Arcade within your web maps in ArcGIS Online or Enterprise, as well as in mobile map packages. And Arcade is, of course, available in ArcGIS Pro as well. And most functionality is available whether you are connected or are you working offline. And then just a little bit more about where Arcade is available. Arcade is evolving all the time, and there are new updates. And at any time, the functionality could differ between what you see in ArcGIS Online or Enterprise or the mobile apps. So we highly recommend using the Arcade version matrix, which is up here on the screen if you want to scan that QR code. If you're looking for specific functionality in Arcade, it's worth checking that out. For example, the Field Maps mobile app is running the Maps SDK version 100, which means the version of Arcade that we're using is slightly different than what you might see in the latest version of ArcGIS Online. So keep that in mind. If ArcGIS Online brings a new function in, it might not be available right away in Field Maps. And I did want to, before we dig into demos and things, I wanted to talk about profiles briefly, just to introduce it up front and what a profile is within the context of Arcade. So a profile defines the environment and the rules for how an Arcade expression is evaluated and interpreted. So the Arcade profile can specify the execution content or the environment controlling the expression's execution. It can also control the variables that are used as input data. So it's going to, whatever profile you're using could show different variables that are available. And it also can define the function bundles available. So you'll see different functions that are suitable for certain Arcade profiles and some that are not suitable for that. And it can also help define the valid data types that can be used to return from an expression. So in this slide, we've shown all of the field maps or related profiles in blue in this slide. We'll be working with probably a good handful of those in our demos. And then I wanted to touch on our demo scenario, because for each of the demos, they're going to be using the same scenario as we progress through it. So we wanted to introduce some context. And this theme is built around a flood response scenario that utilizes Arcade to calculate some complex values for sandbags and materials needed in a flood event. So we will use some of the underlying calculations in our demo, but we have also added some additional layers and expressions to expand on this concept, and also some that are a little bit more simple, just to give you that introduction. And we use this example for the reason to demonstrate that you can repurpose code. You can and should repurpose code when you're using Arcade. And this will help us demonstrate how you can use it, Arcade, from the pop-up to the form, from the pop-up to the forms to help streamline data mobile collection and to enhance your situational awareness. So with that, we will step into the first demo, and this is going to be going over some basics with the Arcade editor. So bear with me if this stuff is not new to you. But let's go ahead and jump out. And I may need, not on the right screen here. Let's just do this. Hopefully this looks okay. Cool. We're in business. All right, so here's the web app we're going to be using for all of our demos. And this, again, this is a flood response scenario. We have a few layers in here. We have a point layer for debris that we're reporting. We have a line layer for barriers, and we have a flood control area that delineates the area of the flooding. So we're going to start with this point layer. And I'm going to go ahead and select that. and open up the pop-up for this. You'll see that the pop-up opened automatically for one of these. It's blank. We're going to go ahead and add some content to it, and we're going to use Arcade. And once we have selected Arcade, it opens up the Arcade editor. So I'm going to introduce the places of this Arcade editor and give you some context to how you can use it. So the first thing you'll see is the name. You just want to give your expression a name, so if you're going to be using that later, it's definitely good to give it some context. So I'm going to say this is going to be debris points just for now. You can always go back and change that. The second thing you might see is this big window. That's where you're going to be writing your code. There's some sample code. Just paste it in there to give you some context. That's always there when you open it up for the first time. You have the run button here, so that's where you're going to run it, and that's going to give you this output window here, and you have a couple different tabs here. The output is going to show your results. The console, if you have a console print statement, it's going to show some results there. If you have some issues, you have some logging, you can check it out in this tab as well. And then over on the right-hand side, I'm not going to dig too deep into this yet, but you have your profile variables. I talked about that before. You can come in here and select, a feature to pull information from a feature. The next tab is your functions. If you're using any functions, this list is going to be populated. You could certainly search through these if you're looking for something specific. You have suggestions, which will usually populate with expressions that you've used elsewhere. You can pull these in quickly into the expression builder. And then help is going to jump you right out to the arcade resources that you can use to look up what you need help with. So we're going to start with just playing around in the editor window for now. I'm not doing anything super complex, but I'm just going to start writing stuff out, and you guys can see what happens. So let's say I want to access this feature. I want to access these debris points. I can start writing a $sign, and you'll see IntelliSense will kick in, is what we call it, and Jake will give you a little bit more context to what that is later, but it'll start giving me suggestions. So let's say, like I said, I want to access this feature. I'll go ahead and hit enter, and then I'm going to put a period, and I want to access the debris type. The debris type is an attribute from this feature. So that's it. I'm going to go ahead and run that, and you'll see that it's going to pull from that first point feature in my attribute table as an example. So I see you have vegetation. So I pulled in that debris type from this feature. So pretty cool. If I didn't know how to write that out, you can certainly pull the same thing as I showed before from the profile variables. If you dig into this with the arrow here, you can see I get that feature. And if I want to go even further, I could go feature and debris type, and it's going to pull it in right there. But let's make this look a little bit more like code. So I'm going to go up here and set this, if I can type, set this to a variable. So my variable is going to be debris points, I guess. And we'll set it equal to that. And then we could go down here and return debris points. And then it looks a little bit more like code, right? I should get the same result. Cool. And then I guess one other thing that I wanted to show you is, let's go ahead and, let's see. You could also, I did mention a console statement, so we'll go ahead and add that. And you can see the output is also in the console there. If this is useful, if you have some code, a lot more code here between lines 3 and 7, and you might be worried about, some issue going on there, you can make sure that what is going on there is reflected into the console, so you can verify that that value is showing.
Can that be bigger? Control+.
Let's see if I can make it a little bigger. Sorry, we had a request to make it a little bit bigger. Let's see if, is that better? Sorry. Gonna make sure I can see it too. Okay. So I'm gonna delete this, and we're gonna go ahead and copy in some a completed example, so I don't have to be writing code in front of you guys. And again, if something is not clear, please let me know. Looks a little better, I think. So this is very similar to what I had written out before, but we've added a little bit to it. A couple console statements just to drive that point home. But basically, we're creating a variable for pop-up text. And through an if statement here, we're grabbing that feature's status. And if that status is cleaned up, we're assigning it this color here. And we'll see what that looks like after I close this out. And if it's not, we're assigning it a different color, basically. And then we're going to return that at the end. So if I run this, we always want to run it just to make sure our code is valid, make sure we don't get any errors. We'll see that that's returning. We'll go ahead and hit done. And right here, you see that the pop-up has changed. It's now pulling in that type, which is the vegetation, and then it's showing that it's submitted in yellow. And I'm pretty sure that that's not going to be very easy to see. But trust me that is like, I guess this is a green, so these are not, I didn't choose great colors. But you see that it's pulling in both of those values and writing it to the pop-up. So this pop-up is going to be visible within the mobile app. And we'll show you a little bit more of the mobile app after we get through a couple more demos. But with that, I'm going to hand it back over to Jake.
Thank you, Colin. All right, we wanted to take a handful of slides to get anyone new to the Arcade Editor a good foundation as to what the Arcade Editor is. The Arcade Editor was redesigned in late 2022, incorporating user feedback and focusing on coding efficiency gains. The ArcGIS Online team published a few blogs highlighting these changes. All right, so let's dive in and get oriented on the layout and component names of the Arcade Editor. At the top is the expression name. As Colin mentioned, give it a meaningful expression. It's easier to track. Below that is the action bar, home to the run command that will execute what's in the expression window, displaying the results in the results window at the bottom. On the right side is the side panel, which has multiple tabs and packs a lot of cool stuff. We're going to go in depth on the expression window, side panel, and results window. The scripts that you write in the expression window are evaluated and return a value. What type of value is expected, whether it's a Boolean, text, or an int value, depends on where you're using it. If a return is not defined, the last line will be used, but it's good practice to return a value explicitly. Commenting in the expression window can be done with a double / or a bookended / for a multi-line comment. Next, code colorization. Using color to provide context is a common practice in design, and syntax highlighting is no exception. A few examples of that: comments are gray, functions and variables are dark blue, and text is red. It meets the standards set by the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. Code colorization is also applied to the results window in the Output tab. All right, IntelliSense, everybody's best buddy. Provides huge efficiency gains. It's intuitive. It works on a variety of code auto-completions. It suggests functions, and it will stub out all the inputs. Profile variables and their properties. Logical structures like if, else, and for loops. Right-clicking on the canvas, and you'll find some handy features like change all occurrences of text, which is great for renaming variables. Formatting document, which will standardize indentation and add semicolons. Any keyboard shortcut fans out there? Okay, a few of you. Command palette shows all the keyboard shortcuts, like F5 to run. There's standard cut, copy, find, paste, all that good stuff. Check it out. There's a ton of them. The editor also identifies errors and warnings with a squiggly line. You can hover for more detail, and it might also recommend a link to documentation. The vertical overview bar on the right helps you navigate to errors, especially handy if you have a lot of code to scroll through. All right, that's it for expression window, and now we're going to move on to side panel. As you can see in the far right of the screenshot, the side panel is organized by tabs. The first tab is profile variables. Which profile variable is included depends on what profile the arcade is executed in. Popups, geofences, forms, etc. Profile variables can be used as inputs to expressions. They are also how you interact with layers and tables in your map, your data. Look for the greater than symbol to identify what has a nested menu that you can navigate and drill into. For example, $map, you can get a complete list of layers and tables. Next is the Functions tab. Functions help you do something with variables. A couple examples: if you want to run a spatial intersect with the current feature against another layer and use the results, or get a date that's a week ahead of the current date. Included in the function lists are constants, debugging functions, functions for manipulating dates, features, and text. And there's lots of math functions as well. So many functions, you'll be happy to know that the function list supports search. Like profile variables, the function list will be dependent on which profile the function will be executed in. Popups, forms, geofences. Not all arcade functions are suitable for every profile. All right, the next tab is suggestions, which will appear if there are any. It will also display existing expressions. It makes it easier for you to copy and paste your existing code into the expression window. And lastly, the help tab. It's just a link to the main help site. There's going to be a lot of other help text along the way. Help is built into the side panel extensively. Wrapping up the Arcade Editor deep dive is the results window. The two main areas you'll be using is the console tab and the output tab. If you have added a console function to your expression window, results will be displayed in the console tab. So similar to the print function in Python, you may find it handy to add console print statements at various points in your script for debugging. Next, the output tab, which shows you what your arcade is returning. The test feature that is used when the run command is clicked is the first feature in your layer or table. There is also a logging tab that will display execution times. All right, now that we have some foundational familiarity with the Arcade Editor, let's jump into another demo. As mentioned in the agenda, let's use some Arcade to streamline data collection in forms and enhance situational awareness using a geofence. We will start in Field Maps Designer and then show what it looks like in Field Maps Mobile. Cross your fingers.
You're gonna have to do the same thing.
I think I'm just going to close this out.
There we go. And I'll bump that resolution up a little bit. Thanks. All right, we're going to be working with the same map that Colin showed earlier. Let's open it in Field Maps Designer. All right. Bump that up. All right, so I'm going to open up forms. So I already have a form created for flood control barriers. We're going to walk through. You can see that I have some combo boxes here, a date form, and I also have some grouped fields as well. Each form field element has properties containing a logic section at the bottom. Show you what that looks like. You see editable, required, visible, and calculated expression. So let's streamline some data collection. This form is a bit long, and what data the field worker is capturing, they may not need to see the whole form, initially. So we're going to use some Arcade to toggle the visible option, the visible property, for a couple of the form field elements. So we can show our field workers just the fields they need to see as they progress through the form. So we're going to go to Install Date and down here to Visible and click on this gear icon and add a new expression. I'm going to title this Visible if installed. And I'm going to go down here to the lower right and click Launch Arcade Editor. I'm going to do a simple expression here. I'm going to use my profile variables over here on the side panel. Click on that. And I'm going to drill into my feature with that greater than symbol. And scroll down to my deployment status field. Now this deployment status field is a domain. So I'm going to go ahead and tap on this domain name. And this is going to kind of bring all that over into my canvas. I'm just going to do equals installed and run it. So in my output tab, it's returning a Boolean value, which is equal to true. So that's going to toggle that visible property to true. I'm going to click done. We're going to do a little bit more. So I have a group, some grouped fields down here at the bottom. And we can toggle visible for that one as well. So it's kind of the same scenario. I'll click on New Expression. And I'm going to name this one Ready for Calculation. And launch Arcade Editor. So make that a little bit bigger. All right, so with this one, I'm going to use IntelliSense, and I'm going to start off with, I want to check to see if the fields are empty. So I just start typing in is, and there's is empty there at the top. I'm just going to hit enter, and you can see that it's already kind of created that and put in value, and value is selected. So I can just go straight into typing what I want to type, which is feature dot, and IntelliSense gives me all of the field names for feature. And I'm going to pick finished height. So if finished height is not empty, and, which is 2 ampersands, I'm going to do the same thing, is empty. I'm going to do sandbag type for this one. And since this is an and, I'm going to do a not and a not. The not logical operator is just an exclamation point. All right, and then we're ready to run it. And it's returning true. And I could even put a return here if I wanted to. All right, so I'm going to tap Done. So in this form, we've also pulled in some arcade from the blog that Colin mentioned earlier. We really like this blog, and we really liked including the examples in it because there's just some well-written arcade that you can stare at and really kind of get a good idea about what some math functions do, how to create your own functions. So we, rather than including these arcade samples in pop-up results, we're bringing them into our form so they can be used a little bit down the road here. I'll show you what those look like in our form. So I've copied and pasted those in already. I'm going to scroll down here, and I'll show you a couple of these. Tap on that. Edit arcade. And there it is. You can even run these. And I have an output as well as some console values as well. We'll have 3 calculated values, sandbags needed, sand needed in cubic yards, and polyethylene sheeting. These are kind of the ingredients to creating a sandbag. All right. Now let's take a look at geofences. Any geofence fans out there? Anybody using those yet? Cool. I'm going to click Save. So geofences were introduced in Field Maps last year, and they can be configured using a point, line, or polygon, and they support buffered distances. A geofence is triggered when the device's current location enters or exits a geofence boundary. There are 2 types of actions that can take place. A location alert will be displayed as a banner notification. That's action 1. Also, we can toggle location sharing on or off. This will keep track of who enters or exits a geofence, where they went, and when. So we created a location alert for our barriers. I have it here. Tap that. And this is pretty simple geofence. It's on that line layer that we're working with this demo. And I also have a filter on it for, so I'm only creating a geofence for features that have a deployment status of installed. If the device is within 100 feet of those line features, it'll trigger a location alert geofence. So the Arcade is also supported for geofences. I'm going to go ahead and tap on that. So if you were to create a new location alert or location sharing geofence, this is kind of the default JSON that you'll see. And this is really what the geofence monitoring portion of the app is looking for. This format is something that is automatically created. So we're going to pull in some arcade that we wrote. Control C. Oh, that's a mess. Who can read that? If only I can format document. I was expecting a clap, but nothing. All right. I'll take it. So I'm going to click Save. Well, actually, I'll go back. Okay, so I will explain that this arcade that we have here is constructing what the text is going to be for that location alert. So we're stringing together the text alert was within 100 feet. We're splicing in what kind of a sandbag type it is, whether it's a single layer or a dike. And we're also adding in a new line for formatting. And then lastly, we're showing the user that calculated value that we added to our form, along with the text tote sandbags. So you'll notice that we've done some abbreviation here, and that is to maximize our real estate for the banner alert. I'm going to click Save. All right, so great. We're going to be switching over to Field Maps Mobile on my iPad. And I'm going to click 3. Try unplugging it and plugging it back in.
There it is.
Oh, great.
Just slow.
Oh, that's really nice. Thank you. Yeah. All right. So I'm running Field Maps 24.1, which we had an update in late February on an iPad, and I have in the background I have a simulated GPX, which is kind of simulating my location, and it's going to be basically the GPS dot's going to be moving around. And I'm going to go ahead and click tap on flood control response. Okay, so you'll see here that this map contains a location alert. So your users, your field workers, will see this alert that the map requires your location to alert you when you approach or leave specific areas. All right, and I open it up and you can see the banner notification displaying distinct values for the number of sandbags for that portion of a flood barrier line that it's running into. Great, and let's jump back. I'm going to turn my simulated location off to just a GPS and open that map again just so we can take a look at okay. Let's do that again. All right. So now with the location alerts demonstrated, I'm going to show you what the form looks like. So I tapped on my collect button and I'm going to tap on my flood control barriers, and you'll see here that we have a pretty tidy form. Not a lot of stuff showing. I'm going to go ahead and tap on single layer, deployment status. So you'll notice whenever I tap on installed, the install date is going to be dropping into the form, like so. And when I give a value to finished height, we'll see those 3 calculated fields show up in that group. And I'll get a little bit more interesting data to work with here. Materials needed. Oh, I don't have a geometry. I'm just going to click add point, and that will give me some values here for the calculated values. Make that geometry a little bit more interesting. All right. All right, and that is that. So I should add that the form, obviously it works well with new features, but if you want to go back and edit existing features as well, you'll see those values populated, the calculated values populated as well. All right, and with that, I'm going to pass it back to Colin for more on arcade forms in Geofences.
Cool. Thank you, Jake. All right, so we're going to recap a little bit of what Jake showed you. So we started off in the forms. So he showed you how you can use Arcade to create conditional logic and calculations to make your forms more streamlined and user-friendly for those collecting data in the field. You can set logic within the forms that can define the grouping of your fields in the form, if and when a field or group might be visible, editable, or required in the form, and you can use calculated expressions to return calculated values directly in the editable form based on what was previously entered by the field workers, as Jake just demonstrated. These calculated values can help reduce the opportunity for error in the field, speed up data capture, and are dynamic whether you're working online or offline. And the demo also covered geofences and how Arcade can be used to define geofence parameters and customize the message presented to your field workers when they enter or exit a geofence. You can configure a geofence for a map in Field Maps Designer under the geofence page. Remember, a geofence can be set to toggle on or off location sharing based on the device's location relative to a geofence feature, or it can also be used to present a location alert, as Jake showed, within the same context, where you can notify your field workers of any potential hazards around their work area. Location sharing and location alert geofences can exist together in the same map. A powerful geofence can be configured using only the user interface, but Arcade can help greatly expand its uses. There will be other use cases covered in the advanced Arcade session later this week that we wanted to pitch for you guys in case you're interested in that. Or you can stop by our booth and ask us more about geofences. So we're going to jump back into another demo. This demo is going to cover a little bit more, kind of expand on my first demo, which was in Popups, but we're also going to throw in some labeling and symbology as well. So our display problems are never going to end. Let's make that bigger. Okay. So back in the same map, and I focused on the points layer the first time. Jake was looking at the barrier, the line layer, and now we're going to take a look at what we can do with the polygon, the flood control area layer. So I'll go ahead and select this. We already have a little bit in our pop-up here, but we want to add a little bit more to that. So let's go ahead and add some content. And we're going to open up that Arcade editor again. And we're just going to start right away by copying in some code we already have. And then we'll walk through what we're doing in this. So we're doing something a little bit different here. Actually, let me give it a name here first. So let's give it debris count. So we're setting a variable. We'll start here at the top. We're setting a variable for called debris FS, or debris feature service. And what we're using is the map profile variable. So we hadn't showed that yet, which will allow you to pull in information from other layers in your map. And the way we're referencing that is by this feature set by ID. And the ID right here is this layer, this other layer in our map. And the layer in question is actually our points layer. So what we're doing is we're also filtering on that layer, and we're looking for all of those points that have a status of submitted. And just real quick, if you don't know where I'm getting this map variable from, I can also show you that. If you go into the profile variables, you can see map. This will show you all of the layers in your map that you have access to. So I could pull in, dig into this debris layer again, this point layer, and we'll see we have that feature set by ID. And you can also reference it by name. If you're using name, you just got to be a little bit careful, because if the layer name changes, your expression could break. So sometimes I like to use the ID instead, even though it's a little bit less readable, but just a suggestion. So let's close that out. And then on the next line, we're just getting a count. So we're counting all of the features that we filtered in the line above. We're getting a count of them and setting it to a variable. We have a print statement there in the middle. And then we are basically formatting the text on these last lines. So we're pulling in those variables we created in different parts of this text string, and we're going to add that to the pop-up. So if I hit run, we see that we have a successful output here. It doesn't look as good here as it might look within the pop-up. The console is returning 2 because it's finding 2 features in that count from above. So we don't see it now, so let me go ahead and drag it up to the top of our pop-up. And this is the output of our arcade expression. You see it wrote out. There are 2 submitted debris reports within the red school road flood response area. So 2 is that count, and the last part here is that feature, is the polygon layer. And I'll show you how that can change on the fly when we demo the mobile app. So let's go jump into labeling next and see what we can do with the labels. So again, we have a place to define a new expression. I'm going to go ahead and open the editor right here, and let's pull in some more code to show. I'm just going to name it area label. So we're setting a variable here at the top. We're pulling in, again, using that feature variable. We're pulling and we're referencing the area names, the name of that attribute from this feature. And then we're formatting it to put in another line on that label. And then on the second line, we're adding, we're taking the feature and then we're calculating its size and outputting, rounding it so it looks a little bit better. But basically, we're pulling in the square mileage of that area and assigning it to the label. And then here at the bottom, we have an if statement where we're kind of defining how we want to show that label. So if the status is active, we're just returning this variable as is. But if it's not active, so in some cases, a flood zone might be closed or it might be historical, we're adding some additional formatting on a new line and just pulling in whatever that status is to show the user what that is. Again, we'll run it just to make sure it looks correct, and we'll hit done. And you see those labels pulled into the map. So we have this flood area, which is 3 square miles, and then we have a historical area right next to it, which is, pulls in that extra line and says that it's a historical area. And now we'll show what we can do with the symbology. So we'll go into the styles. I already have this one defined and active, so I just wanted to step through kind of what we've done here. This one's very simple. We're really just, setting symbology if it's active to one value, if it's not active, to another value. But the other thing we're doing here is using the scale, the view scale variable to define whether or not this historical flood zone is visible. So we're using the console function to view scale just to see what our current view scale is. So that should help us figure out whether or not that is visible or not. So you'll see that if the scale is less than this value, we should see that polygon feature. If it's not, we won't see it. So let's go ahead and check and see if that's working. So this one on the left with the yellow dash line, it might be kind of hard to see. If we zoom out one level, we'll see that disappears. And if we go back into the flood area and run this again and check the console, we'll see that this value is greater than the value defined here, and that's why we're hiding that symbol and labeling. So pretty powerful if you want to define stuff at different scales to be visible or not. Well, so now we're going to jump over to my mobile device, and let's see if we have as much success as we've had in previous instances. I'm going to guess no. And I definitely want to turn off whatever Samsung Dex is, because that has been messing me up. Cool. So we're going to go ahead and open. I've also set a simulated location just so we can get right to that map. But let's go look at everything that we've done so far in this map and see. And actually, let me make sure I save it, because that would be really important. So not shown on the screen. I saved the web map in Map Viewer. And let's go ahead and open it on the mobile device. And there's not much I can do about the resolution here, so I'm sorry. If you guys need, certainly can come up after and I can show you guys what's going on here, but if you can't see it, this is the best I can do. So this is the location alert screen, as Jake showed. He talked about that. But really, all I want to show here is a couple different things. The first thing is the symbology and the labeling. So if I zoom in, we're going to see that historical floodplain show up as I get a little bit closer. If I zoom out, it disappears. The other thing is the pop-up. This was from the first demo, but the pop-up for these debris points, we'll see that that's been brought into the mobile end. We also define the pop-up for this flood control area that says there are 2 submitted debris reports within the area. You'll notice it says 2. I have 3 here. That's because one of these is actually has been cleaned up. So another way I could do this is to hide the symbol or change the symbol just so that's obvious to the user, but that's the reason the value is 2. But you see if I add let's go ahead and add a new debris point, and let's say it's refuse, and it's submitted, we should see this update to 3. So it's calculated on the fly. So now we have 3 submitted debris reports within that area. So pretty cool. And that will be it for that mobile portion if we want to switch back over to Jake.
Thanks, Colin. Pop-ups are a great place to take advantage of Arcade's functionality, either using Arcade exclusively or along with other content such as text boxes, charts, images, or field lists. Arcade is flexible. You can perform calculations or format results to draw focus to important details using color, as Colin demonstrated, or other text formatting using HTML. Arcade makes it easy to pull together an impactful and well-formatted pop-up for your mobile field worker. Arcade can be used to create custom labels, rich text labels, calculations such as converting kilometers to miles. Using conditional logic at a feature attribute level provides granularity to create unique labels for a specific feature or label classes. From a field maps and generally a mobile device real estate perspective, use labels wisely or not at all. Lastly, Arcade can be used for symbology. You can create categories from feature attribute fields, 1 or more. For example, say you want to only display open inspections assigned to a current field worker. As Colin demonstrated, there is a profile variable for getting the current map scale, that view.scale. Pretty cool. Arcade offers map curators flexibility and granularity, defining pop-ups, labels, and symbology that will provide insight into your data and enhance situational awareness. And with that, I'll pass it back to Colin for a summary.
Yeah, and we're going to start to wrap up everything we talked about here. So I guess we just wanted to make some final points that Arcade can do a lot for you in field maps. So whether you're simply just configuring the pop-up to display a single value, or you want to go all the way in and do some calculated values, as Jake showed, or inject things, to inject things right into the pop-up using forms, it can be really powerful. And even geofences is something that's newer that we're continually expanding Arcade with. And the second thing is let the editor help you. So we showed how IntelliSense works, how it can help predict, what you're writing out. You can use it, right-click shortcuts to format your text. There's lots of helpful error messages that are returned if you're not doing something right. And then, of course, along the lines of the next line here is check out our resources that we have. There's tons of blogs out there. Whether it's from our team or from the Arcade team or ArcGIS Online, we're all contributing to this Arcade world, and we all have resources out there for you guys to grab some samples from. So there's training that we offer, and there's videos that you can help follow. We have our resource page that links out from the Arcade editor that gives you some examples as well. And then GitHub is a big one that we have some real world samples that you can pull from to cater to your needs. And then we also want to pitch the advanced workflows with Arcade. So we have a couple colleagues Doug and Kevin, who will be giving that Thursday at 4 to 5 in the Catalina room. So if you want a little bit more than what we showed, certainly we encourage you to go check out that session. Those guys are great, and they're going to show you, a little bit more of what you can do, especially in the forms with field maps. And then, of course, stop by us, visit us in the showcase. We're going to be there all week. So, come talk to us, ask us your questions if we don't get to them today. And then we just wanted to pitch some of the other field map sessions. We're the last one here today, but tomorrow we have the road ahead. If you guys are curious what's coming in Arcade, or if you're just curious on what's coming in field maps, go check out that. We have sessions on Python and automation. So yeah, just check out our sessions and come support our team. And like I said, we're in the showcase. The hours are there if you want to check it out, but I'm sure you guys are well aware of that. And then we have a bunch of resources here, so you're not going to do much for you here. You can take a picture, but when we make these slides available after the conference, you could certainly follow those and check them out. But I've already hit on what most of those are. The last one in there is the blog that we used, and there's other blogs as well. And then, of course, we have ways that you can reach out to us, so certainly, take advantage of those. And there's the GitHub link to where I mentioned before. We have some samples there for Arcade that you can use. And that's really all we got. So please share your feedback with us in the event app. Let us know how we did. And we're going to open it up for some questions for you guys. Looks like we have a few minutes. We ran a little long, but certainly we can take some questions. I think I saw your hand first and then there. I didn't, sorry, the door open. Does that only support Boolean expressions?
It needs to distill down to true or false, but you could have the greater than values as if clauses within that. Yep.
Yeah.
So do we need an add-on license to use the geofence?
So no, short answer is no. If you're using the location sharing geofence, in order to use location sharing, you need a location sharing user extension or the tracker license. But for the alerts that Jake showed, you don't need a license for that because we're not actually storing your location. So it really boils down to whether your location is being sent to the service or not.
In the back?
Yeah, I kind of have a three-part question thinking about code versioning. Is there any desktop IDEs other than this Visual Studio or Visual Studio Code or anything else that makes it sound like this is based on? Is there going to be a desktop IDE, I think, that will support Arcade at some point in the future?
Do you know anything about that?
Not that I know of.
Playing off of that, is there best practices for versioning your Arcade so that you don't have, like say, you have a nice expression, but then it gets expanded, and what you recommend people just copy and paste that into their notepad file that they're sending up to GitHub, and it's kind of clunky. Is there any plans for Esri to help the Arcade version develop?
I think probably the Arcade team, that Showcase Island, they might be best suited to give you the answer. And I think kind of explaining some of your, some of the things you're looking for. I'm sure you'll find somebody there with an opinion. Yeah.
That's a feature request.
Yeah, I'm not sure if there's anything in the works, so I would want them to kind of best answer that question.
And then you guys as actual Arcade users, what do you think of like having a lot of your Arcade in a web map that you functionally treat like a template, and that way it's just up there in the cloud, and your users that are adminning their web apps and maps know that the Arcade is sitting there, and they just go open it up and paste it over there.
So we share a lot of Arcade on GitHub, and in blogs. We haven't talked about sharing a web map that contained Arcade, but that's certainly something we can kick around.
But that being said, the blog that we used
Yeah.
does have a web map shared. So it is a way of doing that. I don't know if it's the way, but I don't think we as field maps arcade users, not the authority on arcade necessarily. I don't know if we know a better way to do it than what you're explaining.
Was there a question in front there?
Presentation that when you hit the test, it pulls the first record for your information. You used to be able to set that to whatever you want by digging in features going in through the interface. I didn't see that up. Has that gone away?
You're talking,
Functionality still there?
you're talking about when you're calling a feature and it
When you go on
takes.
the feature, you double click in through and you used to be able to set that value that you wanted to test against, as opposed to hoping that whatever value you're looking for is the first record they set.
Yeah, I think that changed in that November 2022 release, if memory serves. But yeah, I think you can, as far as what feature you're passing in, have you tried using like the filtering your layer?
No, and yeah, that's valid, but this was just real quick and easy. I
Yeah.
didn't set a filter to then test different conditions. I can just say, hey, I know that I want to test for something no or greater than 100 or whatever. Right in that interface, I can set it, hit test, and see what I got. Okay, so it's not away. Oh, that's gonna hurt. Oh, okay.
You got IntelliSense now, though.
Field maps, but the actual web maps themselves, where they're coming from, is all that available, like, regardless of where you're being watched this online or enterprise, or is there differences, variations?
The question of what arcade is available with versioning, there was we mentioned there is a matrix slide out there, or matrix site that will, depending on what version of enterprise you're running and where you're kind of planning on using the arcade, it does make a difference. So you should be able to dial in pretty quick on what version of arcade you're using. And then you can kind of see how quick arcade's moving from release to release. But yeah, ArcGIS Online is going to have the latest and greatest arcade, and everybody else is just kind of catching up. So fair. It's read only.
Probably. I have to think about it.
So
I think we could-
calculated, the essence of that is like any value that's calculated is then flagged as read only. Yeah. There might be some logic that you can introduce with like a radio button. So if a user selects the option to override, I haven't done that. If you stop by the showcase, we can give it a shot.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Any other questions? Oh. Yeah, in the arcade editor, there was some kind of error underlining that it showed, like with like a red squiggly line from Field Maps Mobile.
We don't, yeah. It might show up in the troubleshooting logs in Field Maps if there's an error of. Yeah. And that's only a small part of your expression, is what you're saying, is get user. Yeah. Yeah. Hmm. Yeah, it's a limitate. The get user is a limitation with offline. We're aware of that one for sure. The editor tracking. Yeah. 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 We can talk more about your scenario about the errors if you want to come up or come over to the island. But I think we should probably adjourn. We're a little over time. But yeah, if anybody else has any questions, feel free to come talk to us.